lie about your qualifications or you produce a forged certificate, it is fraud already in terms of existing law. The problem that we normally have, people take this so lightly. They don't report. Sometimes it gets reported, it's taken as a very minor, inconsequential offense. So yes, we want it to be taken seriously by society as a whole.
Fake qualification scandals continue to rock South Africa following a spate of high-profile cases over the past few years. Good evening and welcome to Unfiltered. I'm Sizwe Mbofu Walsh. Some blame the high unemployment rate in our country, while others blame law enforcement and verification authorities for failing to catch qualifications fraudsters. So tonight we ask, what is the impact of fake qualifications? And in studio, we are joined by Khanki Matabane, the CEO of the Black Business Council. And on Zoom, we have Professor Lumkile Lalendle, who is the Executive Director, Quality Assurance at UNISA, and Dr. Makapa Makafola, Chief Operating Officer of SACA. Let's begin, Mr. Matabane, and I wonder if I could ask you, and I'll ask my other guests as well, how deep do you think this problem of fake qualifications actually goes? Because it seems every year we get these bombshell stories. But what do you think about the deeper problem and how far it actually extends?
Thank you very much, Siso, for inviting us. And I hope, because I'm the only one who's not the doctor,
yes,
I hope your qualifications are proper.
I can assure you, you have nothing to worry about tonight.
So firstly, as the Black Business Council, we condemn the practice of faking your qualifications. And especially because most of the time there's not even a need to fake these qualifications. And we're calling for those who are still not caught to come forward so that we can deal with this bigger problem. Because we suspect it's a much bigger problem. But from where we're sitting, I think we always say, if we don't diagnose the problem properly, we're not going to solve it. And when you look at it, remember our history, we are 30 years into democracy. And when you look at the practice, the majority of the cases have color. It's black people. So we have to ask ourselves questions, why? Why are mainly black people faking their qualifications? And we suspect, and I think that's what maybe we need to discuss, even if not now, one day, to say, we suspect that because black people don't own the economy, they are visitors in their own country. They are trying to impress white people. Why are Afrikaners not faking their qualifications at the rate that the blacks are? Because they own the economy. Why are white people in general, English people, not faking their qualifications? It's because they own the economy, so there's no need for them to impress anyone. I know, for example, the colleagues who are working in corporates, you find someone who's got two accents, one accent for work, one accent for home. The one accent for work is to impress the people who've got power and money so that they can progress further. So we suspect, even in the qualification scandal, the reason, the main reason is because of our history. People are trying to say, if I bring some sort of a qualifications, they will propel me even further.
Right.
And you can see people are not faking qualifications from the Lesotho School of Economics. They are faking from prestigious Fort Hare and all those type of prestigious educational institutions. So for us, I think we need to diagnose the problem and look at it in a much broader sense than only looking at few individuals who are faking qualifications.
Let me bring in Prof. Lalendle here, and what's your view on, you can respond to what's been said, but the general question is, how deep do you think this problem of fake qualification really goes?
Good evening to you, Sizwe, and your viewers. And I think responding to this question, It is just not a perennial challenge that we actually have as a country, but largely, I think newspaper reports, articles that have been written around these issues cite quite a number of high-profile individuals that have been implicated in degree mills activities, and also others who actually aspire to have these titles that others work for, and they want to have them not having worked for, such as doctors and others call themselves even professors and everything. And I think for me, the challenge is that it erodes the prestige and the integrity that needs to be given to these qualifications that have been hard-earned by the individuals that possesses them. And I do believe that it's not really even an issue of color, because if you look at studies abroad, you find that people who were CEOs of Yahoo and people that work in British institutions in high-profile spaces, and also MIT registrars of some point of admission were found having faked this qualification. Therefore, to a large extent, I think it's a greater societal challenge that speak to lack of ethics that has been eroded over the number of years, and also to this issue of fleshy lifestyles that we want to earn because the qualifications allow you. But also, I think as a society, we're very certificated society, not sophisticated, but certificated society, where a certificate matters more than your skills, your knowledge, and attitudes and values, which is something that we need to move on.
Yeah, indeed. Dr. Makafola, what about your perspective? Of course, from SACA, you have a unique perspective on this as a qualifications authority. How deep do you think the problem goes?
Good evening, Sizwe, and thank you for inviting us on your show. To me, I mean, I tend to agree with Prof as well. The issue of a qualification, this is a worldwide problem. I mean, this is global. And it's a huge industry, Sizwe, worth about, estimated to be $2 billion. And as far back as 2015, a Karachi-based software company was accused of, selling this qualification. And this expose was exposed by the New York Times. And not only that, I mean, we as SACWA, I mean, we're trying to, to minimize this as well. As I say, I mean, I like what Prof just raised as well. It's not about the black-white issue. And again, the incentives around having a qualification, it gives you one advantage of having a job and well compensated, and, you become ahead of the game. And people will use anything to ensure that they're ahead of the game. And again, the issue of, all these ICT being available, or artificial intelligence, and people will do anything to try and fake as much, as you can. And being the South African Qualification Authority, I mean, we're in a privileged position because, I mean, we've been recording what you call misrepresentations or these fake qualifications. As mainly, I mean, we deal with qualifications coming from outside. We have the way we look at foreign qualifications. And we deal with the national verifications where we verify local qualifications because, I mean, this is something we're trying to ensure that, we're really trying to reduce. And being in a show like yours as well, it gives us an opportunity as a country to address, because not only SACWA, UNISA, or anybody else out there, they can be able to do it on their own, except when you work jointly as a collective. And I think, to me, as the Minister has said as well, with the amendment of the National Qualification Framework of 2019, so in the Act, it states very clearly that a person or organization that is found guilty of offense, amongst others, which is what you call false claims about qualification, and we found that those things are deemed to be fraudulent. But again, you need evidence. You need to be able to, and that's what we are doing at SACWA. Sure. We can really, go deeper because we have processes in place to ensure that indeed a qualification is a misrep. And with the new Amendment Act, in the past there was never, anything that was promulgated to very clear to say to you, you can serve time. So with the current Act, you can serve up to a minimum of 5 years in jail or with a fine. So now we have an act that really gives us, that's trying to be able to do it. But the challenge is, it's up to employers, because one of the things that I always put the question, I mean, most people, they just employ them without even verifying qualifications or even doing course references, even issues of CVs as well. That's where you can pick up some of these fraudulent things. It's how CVs are written. So I think, to me, it's something that people need to look into as well to ensure that, these things, people are credible. And as I say, we are available because we have the mechanism and we have the act that is, really supporting the work that we do. But as I say, most people don't come and use our facilities for that.
Could I stick with you briefly, Dr. Makafola, and just ask, what are the different ways of faking qualifications? Because it seems that there are many different modes of doing this. And can you enlighten us on some of the different strategies that you have been able to witness?
First thing that what people do, I think I used the example of when this thing came to the global, where even New York Times do the expose. Mainly it's people who are just, renting office in the corner and sell certificates at a price, and people come and buy and to me, those are some of the things that we find out, where people bought a certificate and they thought that were legit. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we face. And as I say, this is a huge industry where people, tend to thrive on it, and as much as people trying to get expose, sometimes it's their bread. They'll try to threaten. I think, to me, that's one of the biggest things. The other one that we pick up, from our side, and I can talk about examples. I want to bring to the South Africa rather than talk about global. One of the biggest certificate that is faked is a matric certificate. And most of our research presentation is around matric certificates. And I think Umalusi, as I alluded to that, the CEO of Umalusi, because this is where, it's one of the entry requirements, whether getting to university or getting a job. So that's one of the biggest. And we have a whole lot of those, corner shops. And one of the biggest red flags I always say to people, when somebody said to you, you can do an MBA in 3 days. To me, that's not a way to go about, because it takes a certain period of time for you to complete a course. And sometimes what people, apart from that, the one thing I always bring to the attention of the people, you find that people say, I'm studying with this particular institution, happen to be outside South Africa. And then, some of those institutions, they indeed exist in the US, whatever it is. And the tendency as a country, when people come from outside, we think, whatever the paper is written, the certificate they show is indeed there. So, most of these institutions that are established, just to offer these particular qualifications. And one of the things that they're not accredited. So, not only are not accredited, they're not even registered on the national qualification framework of that particular country. And that's what some of the things that we pick up as well. To find somebody says, look, I've been to such and such institution in the US or in Australia or in China. And when we find out that institution was not accredited and the qualification is not an NQF, and this is where we come in, as SAQA, and based on our relationship with some of our international, teams that we work with. And SAQA is a member of the Global Academic Integrity Network. And in that forum, we tend to look in terms of, how countries are and what are, things that we look at.
Right.
And one of the things that I give as a highlight as well, you can see a fake certificate sometimes. The way the watermark is not as clear as it is. An example, if it's a certificate that's coming from South Africa, you cannot have a certificate that has a Department of Higher Education and Training logo, have the logo of an institution. The institution is the one that has a right to offer a qualification. So those are some of the highlights that we pick up as well. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Let's go to a break. We're in an important conversation this evening with representatives from business, the university sector, and qualifications authorities about fake qualifications. We constantly hear these shocking reports of people who rise high in our society, and yet when their qualifications are inquired into, we find out that they are fraudulent or fake. How deep is this problem, and how do we overcome it? Let's come back after the break and look at what the university sector can do about this, among other things. Stick with us. From those claiming to be medical doctors to holding PhDs to those who have been in senior government positions, the question of fake qualifications has gripped the headlines in many years, and tonight we're exploring this phenomenon, asking how deep the problem goes and seeing what can be done about this serious issue in South African society. Prof. Lalendle, could I come to you and ask, what do you think is the role of universities in this question?
I think universities as institutions that have been given the right to issue out the qualifications on behalf of the Council on Higher Education, which is the regulator for that. They have a responsibility to ensure that students that have a qualification, they have certified the requirements for such a qualification, which means that they've got the necessary competencies, skills, knowledge, and attitudes and values in order to actually either practice in a professional field or to actually be able to engage in higher qualifications because they've met the entry requirements of that. Therefore, I'm thinking that proper record keeping and then also looking at entry requirements to specific qualifications need to be actually done as such. But also, I think they need, when they are asked about the alumni, they need to actually be able to go through the records and also be able to certify that these people really belong or once belonged to the university and they've studied for a qualification. And the difference between a qualification, a program, and the short learning programs. Therefore, those aspects should actually be done through proper governance arrangements within the university.
Absolutely.
Through their own system. Thank you.
Mr. Matabane, what are your thoughts from the perspective of business on what universities can be doing, or at least the places where these qualifications come from? What's their role in trying to avoid the growth of fake qualifications?
Yeah, firstly, I think from a university's point of view, there should be an easy adoption of technology where the process of verifying someone who claims to have a qualification is much easier and cheaper. You just get someone's ID number and put it there. Professional organizations do it, like SAICA and others. If you claim to be a member of SAICA, you just go to the website. We don't have to contact the university itself because sometimes it becomes cumbersome where you have to call reception and they refer you 10 times, and then by the time you get to the right person, you've already dropped the phone. So they should be able to easily do it. It's a doable thing. But I think the bigger problem we need to deal with is a country moral issue, because and also we need to look at the cost benefit, because majority of people who are doing this are looking at the economic benefits are much more than the chances of being caught. And they know even if they get caught, our law enforcement agencies is not the best in the world. They will take forever before the person is actually taken to task. So as long as there are incentives for people to do this, they'll continue to do it. As long as there are no deterrent measures, people will continue to do it, because if I know I'm not, chances of me being caught are very low. And then the economic benefits are much more than that. I'm likely going to do it. So I think we need to find a way of saying, where do we start? And I still insist the racial issue in South Africa is there because of economic imbalances. There are not many white people who are rigging these qualifications because there's no need. They own their own company. So if I'm going to work for my own company, why must I even lie? I don't need the qualification if I work for my own company. So I think we need to find a way of, and I know South Africa, we talk a lot about moral generation, regenerations, and all those type of things. But we need to find a way of how do we then encourage people from a younger age to be truthful at all times.
Right. We've heard some interesting views on the university sector itself, Dr. Makafola, and also now moving over to law enforcement. Could you give us your views on those two things, both what is the role of universities in stemming this problem, and also, the likelihood of getting caught is still a problem in that people don't seem to believe that there will be consequences for fraudulently portraying their qualifications?
I think from my side, one of the things that rather than trying to, I won't start at the university. I mean, you have to start as an individual as well. I think to me is to make people aware, because not everybody else, is qualified to offer a qualification, needs to be accredited. So that's one thing. Sometimes about public awareness, like the issue of bogus institution. You can still go to bogus institution but not do anything else. So it starts with an individual. Individual must be able to, to find out from both parents and students where they want to pursue their education, and whether whatever they want to pursue is indeed accredited and is registered on the South African National Qualification Framework database. We have the biggest database of all the qualifications in the country, and you can contact us for that. So that's the first step that I feel that as individuals, as parents, please let's not just fall for all these bogus institutions. First of all, let's verify where our kids are going to. And I think I agree with, says the condition start at home and it start within the village, within the community, in terms of trying to to try and deal with this challenge. And in terms of institution as well, I mean, the institutions, they have clear policies in terms of what needs to happen for them to offer a particular program. And for you to have any other qualifications, you have to ensure that you clear with the Department of Education and Training that you can offer that particular qualification. And then you need to go through the rigorous process of ensuring that your program is accredited. And again, before they can even send outside, the institution has to, imply that internally to ensure that all those processes. First of all, I mean, we have Council on Higher Education that oversee the higher education sector in terms of ensuring that those programs really meet the rigor for somebody to undergo that. As much as you can say, what is the university doing, but they need to be tested as well, that they are indeed have the infrastructure, they have the capacity in terms of staff to offer that program. Do they have the mechanism in place and systems in place to ensure that the certificate that they issue is something worth writing on it? So those are the things that, I mean, to take step backward to say that's what institution needs to ensure that happens. And the other thing that the university must do as well, once you have the qualifications accredited, it's registered on SAQA, you have to make sure that you maintain, the currency of that particular qualification. Because over time, you might lose that currency. You might lose people leaving, the infrastructure being dilapidated. And those are the things that, institution, as you ask me, they have to do, the leadership. And I'm glad that we have Professor Lalendle here, who's overseeing the quality assurance. And that's why that role becomes very important to ensure that all their qualifications are indeed, maintained. You can be accredited, so many years ago, but today that might not be relevant because of some of the changes. And one thing that the institutions have to look at as well, I mean, with artificial intelligence at our doorstep, we cannot ignore it as well. So how do you safeguard against that as well? To ensure that, our systems and the way we check issues of misrepresentation, is system-wide. You can be able to detect any frauds around anything, because people, I mean, the fraud is not about qualifications as well. Some people, I mean, they can even use a simple thing. I can come and say, I'm CISO, I want to study an MBA, and CISO can take an MBA written in French, interpret it in English, submit to South African University, and CISO will pass an MBA. And those are the things that universities have to make sure that, they put mechanism in place to ensure that, the issue of fraud in terms of, cut and paste of assignments, cut and paste of dissertation and thesis, they have some sort of a system, the ICT system, to be able to pick up this fraudulent activity. That's why we have artificial intelligence as well, is to utilize those tools to ensure that we don't find ourselves issuing people with, it can happen. Institution can be fooled. As I give you an example. As I say, you can go to, says I can do an MBA and cut and paste and graduate, and nobody knows whether this has been published anywhere. And they have to put that. And this, goes again to papers as well. People get promoted to become professors, and there's incentive around that. So the institution has to create mechanism of plagiarism, because that's another big thing in institution that I feel institution must work around.
Absolutely. Prof. Lalendle, your thoughts on that before we go to break?
Yeah, I'm thinking that Dr. Makafola has mentioned quite a lot of regulatory institutions, the SABC, SAQA, and also some frameworks, which is the HQSF, which is administered by SAQA. And we've got also the National Learner Record database where qualifications are registered against. Therefore, we've got quite a lot of instruments within the country that are available, and we just need to tighten up and also have stiffer sentences for those that transgress the laws of the country, taken as criminals in the true sense of the word.
Absolutely. We'll be back after this short break. We're discussing the scourge of fake qualifications in South Africa. We've seen many headlines about fraudulent portrayals of qualifications from medical doctors to PhDs, and tonight we're exploring exactly where this comes from, how we can stem this problem. Stick with us. We'll be back after the break. From fake doctors to people in high government positions misrepresenting their qualifications or being allowed to pursue qualifications that they don't qualify for, the question of fake qualifications has been at the forefront of our national conversation recently, and we are exploring that conversation this evening. Mr. Matabane, from the perspective of business, what can be done, and what responsibility do those who actually hire, especially in the private sector, have to make sure that they aren't actually continuing to incentivize fake qualifications by letting people through the cracks and even giving them lucrative positions when they don't have the qualifications they need?
So I think this applies to all employers. Whether it's NGOs, labor movements, communities, businesses, and universities and higher institutions, schools and all those type of things. It applies to all of them to have proper verification processes. So that if someone comes and say, I've got the metric, internally, we should be able to, even if not internally, we can outsource. But internally, there must be processes that says, how do we verify qualification A? If someone says, I've got a qualification from an institution outside South Africa, how do we verify it and make sure that the qualification is correct, but also what the person said they've studied is correct? So it's extremely, extremely important that there's a rigorous verification process, because that's where you can be able to pick up this. But
what kind of verification in practice, what would that verification process actually look like?
Yeah, we do have private sector companies. I don't want to mention them and give them free advertising. that are actually doing verification. That's their job on a daily basis. When you get a CV, you submit it to them, and then they check and say, do you have this qualification? Do you have this qualification? So if you are going through a process of being employed, they will send you forms where you sign and say, all these qualifications that I claim I actually have, because then that gives them a right then to go and check. But what we've realized, especially in business and private sector, is that where there's nepotism and where the referrals or recommendations of candidates come from the top. In private sector, there's a top-down type of thing compared to private sector, public sector. Public sector usually have better processes because it doesn't matter who tells you hire this person. There's always a policy that says all posts must be advertised. But in a private sector environment, sometimes I meet you at the airport, have a conversation with you, I like you. I then send your CV as the CEO to the HR executive and say, please take the process forward. Because now you can see there's some nepotism in it. The HR executive, because they want to protect their job, they don't do rigorous verification. They assume, because this comes from their boss, it must be okay. And I suspect some of these occurrences that are picked up by the media is because of those type of things, because of a top-down approach, you don't question your boss. Otherwise, that is career limiting.
Absolutely.
So we I think as business, especially private sector, we need to put all these verification processes in place. It doesn't matter how the person gets referred to. They must be taken to the same verification route.
Right.
And then that way you'll be able to pick up all these things.
Indeed. Prof. Lalendle, what are your thoughts about the responsibilities of employers here and what they can do to verify and check qualifications?
I do believe that there is a high onus on the employers to actually work with various bodies. One of them is the South African Qualifications Authority. They do have a verification system for all foreign qualifications, including for also those that want to study in South African universities. And that process has been running fairly well, and it needs to be better capacitated so that we can actually receive the reports in speed to enable students to register for higher qualifications within our universities. But also, I know government departments and private sector, they use some companies, I will not mention them, but they deal with also checking the accreditation of qualifications. And there are regional and global verification agencies that are used in South Africa in order to check on qualifications. I think there are 25 participating institutions in Southern Africa in what is called NQR. And then also in Africa, I think quite about those global ones are widely available. Therefore, let's just use the instruments that are available so that then we can catch up those individuals that are trying to cheat the system. And there've been a growth in that in the recent years, which means that these systems are actually working in catching those that are trying to outsmart us.
Dr. Makafola, what are your thoughts? You know, one thing that comes to mind when we talk even just about employers is at each stage, of course, I'm thinking about the interview stage, for example, when someone submits a CV, but then you finally have a chance to actually speak to them directly. You know, not just taking things that are in a CV for granted, but actually quizzing and making sure that the candidate can verify what they claim to have achieved.
Look, I think you touched something very important as well. I mean, the process sometimes starts within the interview room. I always say to me, the body language, that tells you a lot, and the way you pose your question. But in terms of the issue of the education verification, you know why that is critical as well. I mean, it's to verify the academic, what you call the academic credentials of a candidate, to ensure that the relevancy and authenticity, I'm going to emphasize this, authenticity of the document. So to me, that becomes very important. And what has helped us as South African Qualifications Authority is the National Qualification Framework, National Qualification Framework Act 2019. So it empowers SAQA to provide verification and evaluation services to ensure that the authenticity and the compliance of qualification and part qualifications. So it means, you know, in terms of the regulations, you know, people, you know, are at liberty to come to SAQA to do that verification. And the reason why is that easy as well. We are sitting with the National Learner Record Database, over 22 million database of achievements in the country. So the easy way to do a verification and is to come to an organization like us and to come and verify, because not only that, so the Act of Parliament is in support of that. And not only that, I mean, the Act, I mean, continue to say, I mean, if some of these things are fraudulent and there is consequences to it. In the past, it was not like that as well. And this, I'm talking in relation to what is happening nationally and internationally as well. So we have a unit that is looking at verifying international qualifications. And most of the time, most employers find themselves challenged, especially dealing with those qualifications that are outside the country, because, you know, they don't have the processes.
We've seen a number of examples of people using international institutions to try to fraudulently portray their qualifications.
Yeah, I think to me, this is where we come in. And I think I did share with you that not only that we are part of a global movement and we sit and exchange information. And one of the things that we do from our side, I mean, we have what you call a verification database. So there's a database that, it's a tracking system of our operations because we know some of the institutions, their status, and in those particular countries as well. And we have what you call the foreign qualification administrative system. So, I mean, this is the thing that contains information on all foreign evaluation applications. So we can tell you, how it comes in. Even some of our counterparts, we can contact them as well. And then we have what you call a searchable database, which, I mean, this is something that we use to, where most of these qualifications are registered. And as I say, we utilize them very clearly. And one of the things that we issued, once we have indeed evaluated your qualification, we issue with you what you call a certificate. And this is a certificate that tells you that, indeed, your qualification is in good standing. And then you can use that as well in your qualification together with the certificate that SABC, issue for you to be able to ensure that your qualification is credible. And we work, closely with some of the government departments as well. And if they want to employ individuals, and, if dealing mainly, and we've done some of the projects, even trying to, help, some of the people who are refugees to obtain their qualifications. So we are, in terms of the Act, we are the organization that have the database, that have the information, that have networks to verify qualifications.
Mr. Matabane, any thoughts on what has been said, especially from SAQA, and how they verify qualifications before we go to our break?
Yeah, I think there are two issues. The first thing is that sometimes what we've picked up is that the cost of verification is also a bit higher for small businesses. Remember, majority of the small businesses are living from hand to mouth. So instead of doing verification as small businesses, they opt not to do it because it's costly. So perhaps maybe SAQA can partner with other institutions like ourselves and others who've got small businesses to then find a way. How do we maybe get small businesses to be able to verify?
Right.
Because the challenge is that if one works for a small business, they do their work very, very well. They get referred to now a bigger organization, and if they fake their qualification there, some people may just say, but the person is very good, that it doesn't matter whether they faked or not. So I think it's important to have that type of a relationship because I think SAQA can play a very, very meaningful role in ensuring that people get caught.
Yeah.
And then we can then speak to the law enforcement agencies as well to say, when people get caught, let's set a few examples so that we can develop a deterrent methodology, method. And because once people realize that you can get caught, you can serve the 5 years that have been mentioned, the prevalence of these cases will reduce. But I think we need to maybe have a conversation with SAQA ourselves as well.
Indeed. Let's go to our break, and we'll come back after that break to pick up on that point, which is looking at the regulations and the legal landscape, and we'll also think about the way forward and the future from here. We're talking about fake qualifications and whether they're rising and how that can be stopped in South Africa. Stick with us. Fake qualification scandals have rocked South Africa over recent weeks and months, and tonight we're inquiring into fake qualifications, where they come from, and how they can be stopped. Let's see some of the comments that you've been making on social media, where I believe there's been a healthy debate. And Olani says, they, being fake qualifications, waste other people's time, and unfortunately that's the one scarce thing we cannot afford to lose. People should also do their due diligence when enrolling. If it isn't SAQA registered, stay away from it. Spot says they make a mockery of people who have strived to get educated properly and attain their qualifications. And let's take one more comment, and I'll put these to our guests. Mzuvugile says deserving people are being deprived of jobs, and the life of patients are at risk when they are being operated by these fake doctors. Private and public sectors may not cover the money that has been spent when the truth comes out. Those people must be criminally charged. Dr. Makafula, can we start with you in responding to some of the comments that have been made on social media?
Thanks, Cesar. To me, one of the things that has been raised as well, especially the last comment to say, people need to be charged. And the NQF Amendment Act 2019 is very clear about penalties. There's consequences to that. And it's up to, the employers or those who are finding out to report that to the, police or, people who take, proper action to ensure that people are arrested.
Tell us more about those consequences, Dr. Makafula, if you might.
Yes, I think in terms of we talk of offences and penalties, that's Section 32 says, a person is guilty of an offence if the person makes a cause to be made a false entry in the National Learners Record Database, the database that I'd mentioned as well. If a party in this instance, or it can be a bogus institution, falsify the dissemination of or publication of a qualification or part qualification. When a fraudulent purpose knowingly provided false or misleading information in any circumstances in which the Act requires the person to provide information or give notice of that. And the Act further stated that failure to produce and you find to have a misrepresentation, you are liable to pay a fine or to serve up to a minimum of 5 years. That's a minimum 5 years. So it means the courts can decide if, to me, depending on the seriousness of the case. So now we have an Act Parliament that supports the consequences management when people fail to adhere to the right procedures.
Prof, could I ask you, about your thoughts on what's been said on social media and the consequences that do exist for those who do falsify their qualifications?
Yeah, I do believe that what Dr. Makafula has mentioned as outlined in the NQF Act and the sanctions that are there for people falsifying their qualification is something that needs to be fortified, and also there must be requirements where those that have actually found out, like for example, if it is SAQA that has found that this is a bogus qualification that this person is claiming, SAQA must report that to the police, because the problem is that they find out and they don't. If it's an institution that is actually somebody have claimed that have studied there and they found that never existed, that institution must go and report and say this person is using our name in vain, so that then there can be proper prosecution. I think that's true. It's likely that is the current missing link. But also, I think issues such as doctors operating on patients, giving prescriptions and recommending medication when they are actually not trained, I think that is cross kind of application of what that profession should be standing for. Therefore, people in that profession should make sure that those individuals are actually charged accordingly, and they must maybe remain in jail towards their fraudsters and their criminals, full stop. Therefore, I think harsh penalties for offenders is something that I would advocate for.
Mr. Matabane, any thoughts on the social media comments or the responses from our panelists?
Yes, I think people who are caught should be blacklisted. So we should have a blacklisting, a register somewhere, so that if, for example, I'm a small business, I want to verify, I just go to the blacklisted list and check if the people that I'm interacting with have been blacklisted or not. I think the other challenge, again, this is a South African problem, and I'm tempted to ask SAQA, how many people have ever been charged? Because for us, as long as people are not charged, whether there's a legislation or not, there will always be then incentive for people to continue. But we need to find a way of stopping this by charging people and showing examples. And someone did say whether it will work or not is a different question. It's a difficult question. Someone was suggesting maybe we should have qualifications commission, but I think that the way there are so many commissions in South Africa, I think people are not did not buy into that. But almost in the same line as the Truth Commission to say, let's get people to come out. And once people come out, we give them maybe a period of 6 months. And then we said, those who don't come out during this period, we'll deal with them harshly. But those who come out during this period, perhaps maybe we may find other mechanisms to forgive them in a way. Because my suspicion, the problem is much bigger and much deeper. So people are just saying, as long as I don't get caught, I'm fine where I am. And people who are already in the system are going to be difficult to detect, because from a verification point of view as an employer, you only verify when you are hiring a new person. But most of the time when you are promoting person from position A to B, because the person is already in the system, you don't necessarily do those rigorous verifications. But also, if someone does not resign, does not get promoted, they're just staying in one place, you are not going to be checking people. But if we call up upon people and say, maybe people must come forward and say, I did lie about my matric, but I've got my PhD legally. So maybe forgive me for my matric, but I still keep my PhD. And so I think we need to find a way, because then that way will start a moral regeneration type of a movement, so that at least we can then deal with the bigger problem. Otherwise, we're only going to be dealing with the peripheral issues, because as and when people get caught, we make noise. After that, we keep quiet, and then it happens again. And but we're not going to solve the bigger problem.
Dr. Makafola, we have just a minute left, but I wonder if you have any thoughts and a final word on that proposal.
Look, I think to me, we do have a list of misrepresentation, and the act was only, came into effect last year in October, and it's something that indefinitely it needs to be taken into consideration. And most of it has come to us once people have been employed. I think that the matter raised it so well that it's after effect. They don't come before things are happening.
Yeah.
And I think to me this is something. We do have that misrep. We submit it to the minister. We do it every quarter to check, and then from there, as I said, this has to do priority authority. And to me, most of the when companies approach us, we do give them the feedback, and it's for them to act against those individuals. So Excellent. It's something that, and for us to see this happening, I think it's time. All of us. It's easy to point fingers at one particular person, but I think it's a collective as a country to ensure that we really deal with this. And I always say it's not about us. It's a global thing. So we need to really, and having a show like yours is really bring this to the attention of the country. I pray and hope that there are some, prospective employers that are listening, and that, they need to really, take, cognizance of some of these things to ensure that, they even, re-verify the qualification of people that have employed, because some of them might have been there before your time. You find that they already have those qualifications. Yeah. So I think to me that calls for institutions, including ourselves, that we have done. I was verified to work at SABC.
Well,
so it's not like
I hope so.
By the virtue of just, no, I was verified. Otherwise, I would be where I am. And see what I'm saying now.
I think we'll have to leave it there. But thank you so much, Dr. Makafola, for your time, as well as Prof. Lalendle and Mr. Matabane, for a fascinating conversation from many perspectives about this problem of fake qualifications. I'm Dr. Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, and I promise I am Dr. Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh. Thanks for joining us for another installment of Unfiltered News, Unfiltered Views, and Unfiltered Conversations. Let's continue this conversation on social media. Have a good night.